Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, today being Monday, March the 20th. And welcome to all those following online. We have some absentees today that unfortunately aren't able to attend, and we have a few members of the lower tier in to replace some but not all the seats. I'd just like to extend a welcome to Councillor Manley from North Glengarry and Councillor Vino from South Dundas. I'm sure you gentlemen will enjoy today's meeting, as we all do. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. The adoption of the agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Lang, that Council approve the agenda.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. The adoption of the minutes.
It's moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Williams, that the minutes of the meetings, including the in-camera minutes of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, held February 15th and 21st, 2023, be adopted as circulated. All
those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, is carried. Today we have some delegations, and a delegation, and from the City of Cornwall. Madam CAO, if you would introduce our guests.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Joining us today from the City of Cornwall, we have the CAO, Mark Wallow. We have the General Manager of Financial Services, Tracy Bailey. And then presenting, we have Melissa Morgan, who is the General Manager of Human Services and Long-Term Care, and Chief Lister, who is our Head of Paramedic Services for Cornwall SDG Paramedic Services. I believe the City of Cornwall approved their budgets a couple of weeks ago, so following that we wanted to have an update on the status of that and how it affects our county's budgets as well. So with that, I think we could have City of Cornwall come forward.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. This morning we're going to present the 2023 budget for shared services. As your CAO indicated, our council the City Council approved our budget the beginning of March. And with that, there were some changes to the information in your agenda package. The change to SDG is a reduction of just over $109,000. So as we're going through the different services, we'll talk to that. No service level changes though. So with that, Ms. Morgan will start with the presentation. I believe it's your agenda, page 14 for Ontario Works.
Good morning, Warden Fraser and Council. Thank you for having us here this morning. So as Ms. Bailey indicated, we will be starting with Human Services. Typically with our Human Services Department, although we're three separate divisions, we like to look at our budget as from a holistic approach, so how we can best serve all the clients in Cornwall and SD&G. And so a lot of times what we will do is we will realign services within those divisions to help best manage our budgets as well as meeting the needs of those clients. So we will start with Ontario Works, which is on page 14 and 15. And I'll just go over some high-level key areas just to provide some information for you. In terms of salaries and benefits, we have not increased our FTE count for Ontario Works as of yet. These increases do represent incremental and contractual obligations. And the changes also reflect some realignment of staffing through our Human Services Division, as I had indicated earlier. In terms of the purchase of goods, this decrease in this area is largely due to the full implementation of one of the projects in 2022 that's not budgeted in 2023. It was just a one-time project, and that has been completed, so it's been removed from the 23 budget. In terms of services and rents, as I indicated above under salaries and benefits, we have reallocated 2 full-time staff from our general cost of administration to a new budget called Circles budget. Circles is a program that helps people transition from poverty, and it's a community collaborative, and we hold the rights for Cornwall and SDG for that program. So we've realigned 2 staff, 2 existing FTEs to oversee that particular program. And training for the implementation of life stabilization is being funded through reserves in 2023. We are moving to employment transformation as of January 2024 as per the province's initiative. And so with that comes a new mandate for us, which is essentially life stabilization of clients. And so with that, we will be undertaking training of our staff in 2023. Financial and transfers. Client benefits in this area have been kept at 2021 levels. There's no new funding, well, I shouldn't say there's no new funding formula. There is an imminent funding formula change being announced by the ministry. We have just received that announcement, and once we've had the opportunity to determine how that is going to impact our budgets, we will be making presentations to both city and county councils to indicate what that will look like for 2024. In 2023, we do plan to install kiosks at our main site for better client service. Many of our ministries are moving to more of an electronic format of information sharing with clients. So in an effort to help facilitate that, all of our divisions are supporting the installation of kiosks. In terms of provincial and federal grants, as I indicated earlier, there will be a change to our funding formula. Ontario Works benefits for clients, though, still are 100% funded by the province. It is the remaining cost of administration that is further funded between the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services and the tax base. When we have our funding for Ontario Works has remained flat at 2018 levels. That was consistent in 2021, and we've tried to remain within that funding formula and that allocation from the province. As indicated with the new change to our funding formula, we will be reviewing the impacts of that for 2024. That essentially is our Ontario Works budget.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Questions on the Ontario Works? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It always makes me nervous when the province talks about changing funding formulas.
Me too.
And is there any? Are they going? Is there going to be more downloading? Do you anticipate, or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden. So initially, when the Employment Service Transformation Initiative was announced by the province 2 years ago, oh, I hope that's not me. Okay. So when the Employment Service Transformation was announced, the province had indicated that there is a portion of funding that municipalities receive to deliver employment services. That portion of the funding would then be transferred to the service system managers. So in essence, what's been happening is service managers who have already gone through phase 1 have received a 22% decrease in their funding formula, and that is the anticipated decrease that we're expecting as a phase 2 site for 2024. So that really is to offset any of those employment-related services we should have been providing to clients that this new service system manager will be providing. So with that impact, we will determine how it impacts us to see how we can best manage with the existing staffing levels that we have, because certainly caseloads are rising, and we don't anticipate caseloads to decrease in the next year simply because of other mitigating factors in our community. And so we really want to take the time to assess how that impact, the decrease of the funding is going to impact us, so that we can still maintain service but have the least impact to the tax base as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a quick follow-up.
Please go ahead.
It's probably too late for this, but should we be looking at sort of lobbying efforts, a little political push from from SDG in Cornwall on this, or is it sort of a done deal?
Through you, Mr. Ward, in terms of the employment service transformation, it's pretty much a done deal. We're moving into phase 2, and they're already starting phase 3 and 4 initiatives as well. In terms of funding, though, we have submitted a business case to the province with respect to current initiatives with our rising caseload right now with respect to the asylum claimants. And so we are expecting an announcement from the ministry any day now on that business case and whether or not we'll receive additional funding from the province to support that.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any further questions, comments from Ms. Morgan concerning Ontario Works? Thank you. Seeing none.
Thank you. So in terms of children's services, again, with salaries and benefits, this represents increases in incremental contractual obligations. Like OW, the change reflects some realignment of staffing through our entire department. In terms of the purchase of goods, the increase of purchase of goods is largely related to public relations increase. We have received one-time funding from the province for a workforce strategy for recruitment and retention initiatives as it relates to registered early educators. And so we feel that providing some additional funding to public relations is going to help support those efforts. In services and rents, most of the increases in this area really are a direct result of the implementation of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, otherwise known as CWELC. And that includes substantial increases to stabilize funding to offset the reduction in childcare fees. In addition, we've realigned the budget really to reflect more trends and more accurately reflect special needs. If you recall, we closed our directly operated childcare center and reallocated those resources to our special needs resourcing demands that we were seeing an increase of for this area. The other increase is for operating repair and maintenance costs, and this is largely funded by the ministry. In terms of financial and transfers, in 2023, again, we plan to install kiosks, and so our Children's Services Division will be supporting that as well. And for our revenue, currently receive funding based on an existing formula, which is calculated for our new CWELC funding, and this accounts for those increases in the internal revenue. We also receive increased funding for early learning childcare, and in addition, we receive parent fees through directly operated childcare agencies. In 2022, there was a funding formula change with a cap on cost sharing of administrative funding, which was reduced from 10% to 5%, and it was to be further reduced in 2023. However, the ministry, with the implementation of CWELC, the ministry has provided us with one-time transitional funding to offset those reductions to help support the implementation of that program. It's anticipated that the funding formula from the Ministry of Education has been delayed to determine how the full implementation of CWELC, what that impact will have with service managers. And that's it from Children's Services.
Questions, comments on that presentation? Yes, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Thanks for the kiosks. Are they like self-checkouts, and are they going to make it harder for people to talk to somebody if they need to talk to somebody?
Through you, Warden Fraser, no. What this is anticipated to do is clients will be able to search online. If they don't have access online to online services themselves, they can come in, they can look up their file, they can look up their benefits, they can see who their caseworker is, they can actually report in for an appointment. And so if they're there to see somebody, instead of reporting to our reception area, we're split over 2 floors, and we have one reception area, so they can come and report in, and it will let their case manager know that they're there for an appointment, so they don't have to physically report to reception every time they come in. However, it's not going to preclude, if they want to speak with somebody, they can call, they can report to reception, and we will make sure that they speak with a live person.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure that we don't take the people out of it.
Correct.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Anything further on Children's Services? See nothing.
In terms of housing services, this is split into 2 main areas. We have a housing programs division, and that division is primarily operated of our 340 Pitt Street office. and it administers funds or programs that are largely funded 100% by the province. And then we have our Housing Services Division, which is the direct provision of community housing and the ongoing administration of those units. They are operating out of currently our 1916 Pitt Street location, but we'll be moving to our new development on 9th Street. In terms of our salaries and benefits, due to operational requirements, we did plan for a 0.4 of an increase of an FTE, and essentially that's an existing permanent part-time position to a full-time position to support maintenance requests. As we bring on more units, there's an increase in demand for maintenance requests, and so we've added that. Other increases represent incremental and contractual obligations. For purchase of goods, there's a net decrease in purchase of goods. Again, this includes a one-time reduction for maintenance and repair materials, and that's just to align better with city best practices. There's an increase of $140,000, which is a direct result of our new build on 9th Street. And in 2022, there was a one-time project for rebranding once we merged with our local housing corporation, and that is not included in the 2023 budget. Services and rents. Variances in this area are due to one-time project costs. They include a backflow prevention project, costs to relocate and set up our housing services office to our new location, creating an online application form. So what's happening with our new builds is that not all of those units are rent geared to income. We will be accepting applications for market tenants, and so we'll be creating an online application form so that individuals can apply through that portal. We are hiring a consultant in 2023 to do an update of our housing revitalization plan. That's being funded through reserves. And we are also hiring a consultant for the creation of a 10-year development plan. It's also funded through reserves. However, this 10-year development plan more than likely will look like a 7-year development plan, which will align with the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus's 7 in 7 initiative. There was also a realignment of some job codes, again, to meet best practices within the corporation, and this was following a full year implementation, or merger, I should say, of our local housing corporation into the City of Cornwall. We've also hired 2 housing stability coordinators. They were not in the 2022 budget, but they are 100% funded by the ministry. They are registered social workers, and we hired them to help bridge the gap in services between what we offer and what external agencies may offer. We do have some long-term financing and debt. Again, these are as a result of bringing on 104 new affordable housing units into our portfolio. And we also are in the process, we're in the year 2 of a 5-year phase-in process of a rent supplement review. And what this is doing, it's bringing our 323 rent supplement units that are critical to our community up to a more of an accurate or average market rent that's comparable within the market rate now. And the other thing with housing services that is important to note is that the province continues to mandate what the cost indices are for external housing providers. And so that's a legislated obligation that we have under the Housing Services Act. And those transfers in 2023, the increase was an increase of 6%. Housing services is primarily funded by rental revenues or municipal subsidies and some provincial grants. And in terms of federal provincial transfers, our housing programs division does receive quite a bit of 100% provincial federal funding for various programs like our Housing Prevention Program, our Canada-Ontario Community Housing Initiative, and our Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative. For affordable community housing, this is primarily funded through rental revenues and municipal subsidies. Federal funding is still received for some mortgages, and that's partially offset operators' subsidies, but as mortgages drop off, those federal funds drop off as well, and they're reinvested into other programs. And that's housing services.
Questions, comments about housing services? Councillor McGillis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Just wondered, where are we on the list? Like, is the list getting a little shorter in terms of the people waiting for affordable housing units?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I don't have that number, the updated number with me. I believe the last number we had was somewhere in around 500 individuals on the wait list, and it really depended on whether they were singles, couples, or families. The average wait time depends on the type of unit you're looking for and how broadly your selection is. The more narrow your selection is, the longer you will wait for a subsidized unit.
Thank you for that answer. Just wondering, the building on 9th Street, I know they're running into different issues because of the supply chain issues and whatever, and the extra costs. When do they think they're going to be completed with that project?
Through you, Mr. Warden, actually, we are quite confident that we will have occupancy for July 1st of this year.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything from other members?
Included in your budget package as well also are our capital projects. If you like, I can go through each of them. Specifically, we are mandated as a landlord to follow the Residential Tenancies Act, and so many of these projects all relate to general maintenance, improvements in energy efficiencies, or health and safety. Our first one on page 21, that really is just a, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. That is a contribution from our reserves to help offset the cost of the full development on 9th Street, and that's just to help make things more affordable in terms of rents for our tenants. Page 22 onward, again, these are all various capital projects related to the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of all of our buildings across Cornwall and SDG. We have plans to install a backup generator in one of our buildings on Augustus Street. On page 24, 25, again, some building exterior renovations, again, to a lot of these are for health and safety. Infrastructure, again, just making sure we've replaced things like our hot water piping replacements, sewer replacements, things like that. And page 26 and 27, again, are just further. Some of these are the grounds. That really is for health and safety, and building exteriors on page 27. That's for our nonprofit housing capital repairs.
I'm looking around and I see that we can move right on to Glen Stordon Lodge.
All right. So the last of my budgets is Glen Stordon Lodge. Again, that's on page 20, it starts on page 28 of your documents. In terms of salaries and benefits, again, the big change to this is really relates to incremental and contractual increases. We did have a couple of additional full-time employees. These have been partially, if not mostly, funded by the ministry, and they are mandated by the ministry. One of those in particular is our infection prevention control coordinator. That is a position that was mandated by the province during COVID. And again, in some of these areas, there's a realignment of staff within the lodge to better reflect services that we provide. The increase in purchase of goods, this simply is an increase in purchase of goods as it relates to food cost provision as a result of inflationary costs. Services and rents, the lodge had been providing hot meals through Meals on Wheels, and that program and our Day Away program have restarted, which have increased our transportation costs again. And we've increased our funding for recruitment and retention efforts in 2023. It's no surprise, I think, to anybody that long-term care and the health sector in particular are struggling to recruit and retain staff. And so we really are putting some funding behind that this year to, in an effort to try and fill any vacancies that we may have within the lodge. We do have some long-term principal and interest which is expected to be completed by the end of 2023. and at that time, the city will borrow money for those projects. We have increased our contribution to reserves by $50,000, and that's just to support life cycle capital works for the lodge. In terms of revenue, we receive our revenue from various sources. We are funded through the ministry based on a number of funding formulas, as well as a case mix index, and so that's really centered on resident acuity. As noted for 2023, we have received some additional funding for specific programs, and that's in order to meet our continued increase to 4 hours of minimum care per resident. And we also expect an increase in our funding for resident acuity in 2023, but we have yet to receive that information. Internal revenue. Our internal revenue is a fee that we charge to our other divisions, such as outreach for space within our facility. And our outreach programs, there is a reduction in this cost as a result of realignment of staffing expenses to more accurately reflect services provided. And there is some capital for the lodge as well. But
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Excuse me. Questions, comments, thoughts? We'll continue.
all right, on page 31 of your package, those are the capital jobs that we are recommending for our 2023. Again, many of these projects are either health and safety related, or they are infection prevention control, and so some of these are funded through other ministry sources. And it's really to start replacing furniture so that we are in a better position to prevent the spread of infection. Example, moving from cloth chairs to leather chairs, or easily washable chairs as an example. We do have some plumbing retrofits that we will be undertaking in 2023. In terms of our building exteriors on page 32, realistically that is mostly due to health and safety of staff and residents, with some deteriorating sidewalks and retaining walls. On page 33, we will be replacing quite a bit of equipment in terms of our refrigerators, laundry dryers, again, just to bring in more energy efficient appliances, or for infection prevention control as well. And on page 34, this is really a replacement of resident equipment, just to replace aging equipment that we currently have.
Thank you. Is there any questions, comments, or anything further from you, ma'am?
Nothing for me.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Through you, Your Worship, we'll ask Chief Lister to join us now for the presentation of paramedic services.
Thank you. Welcome, Chief Lister.
Thank you, everybody. I feel really low here. I think that's on purpose. Morning, everybody. I'm here to present the Cornwall SDG paramedic budget. So there's 4 key main objectives here, and the first one drives the whole ambulance service, which is to meet the legislative responsibilities, which includes response time. The reflection of this budget, it tries to address 2 major concerns, and that is our call volume is growing faster than the population growth. So we're trying to keep up. And the second issue is staffing issues, which is dealing with recruitment and retention. Most of the this year it's a foldover of the last year's budget, except for the addition of 1 supervisor who will come on in June, July of this year, depending on our ability to recruit. Everything else remains pretty much status quo, except the cost of living and supply chain is just killing us. Those are words you don't like to use in paramedic services, but the supply chain, we either can't get it, or when we can get it, it's really, really expensive. And in the narrative, you'll see some examples, like drugs have increased like 100%, and vehicles, which we'll talk in capital, if we can get them, they've gone up by 40%. So that's pretty much the reflection of the budget. The other big issue is how long it takes us to do calls, and it's lengthening. And a lot of that has to deal with factors beyond our control. That's normally you hear words like offload delay, which is tied up in the hospital. We can't get released from the hospital to do the next call. So we've introduced programs. This is provincially funded. It's called the Community Paramedic Program, which is a proactive approach to emergency care where we'll go into the homes on people who recognize as high risk for using the emergency for non-emergency settings to keep them managed outside of the emergency department. That one's 100% funded, and we run that as a program. That's pretty much the budget as you see it. I'll stop there, and then we'll do capital if you wish.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments from members of council? Commiseration with the chief about some of the struggles from members of council.
Yeah, it's tied to healthcare, I think, all over, or even recruiting is such a difficult thing. So in the capital, there's 5 capital projects. 3 of them are just replacement of things that are wearing out. We normally replace 3 ambulances a year. If we can get them in 2023, which is unlikely, we'll be replacing 3. This is, we did a pilot project just to give you some mindset that we're trying to be as cost effective as we can. There's a new program where you can take the box off the back of the ambulance and just replace the chassis underneath. We're doing that, which is saving, well, over the next 10 years, it'll save $1 million. The problem is we can't get the vehicles. So we're already 2 years behind on the vehicles that we should have replaced. So we're running them longer. And we replace them because they're worn out. So we have like engines in storage, and we have the older units just in case we run out. We run with 3 extra ambulances. So our fleet is 14. We run 10 in a day. So that helps us like do regular maintenance and so on. So it's a concern, but we haven't run into the situation where we can't put ambulances out because of the delay in the ability to replace. So ambulances come with stretchers. We replace the stretchers every second cycle. They're expensive. They're motorized, so it takes wear and tear off of the people. It's kind of like mini forklifts. So it's not just, they're quite expensive. And the third one is the blocks that hold the defibs on the stretchers. There's regulations on all of this stuff like that. It's called pull testing. All the engineers in the room will know exactly what we're talking about, but so you can't just go to a weld shop and say, I need a block. You have to have it pull tested, and they're at the end of their life, so we're replacing them. One of the programs we run is the public access defibrillation program. That's the orange defibrillators that hang in the white boxes. There's about 131 of them in, 131 of them in SDG in the city of Cornwall. Some of them are 10 years old and they need to be replaced. So we're replacing 10 of those. The helmets that the paramedics use are, they have a life expectancy on them, and we'll be replacing those with new helmets. And the last one is it's evolution of the way we do business, and that's a real-time view, which is basically a new way of dispatch being able to communicate with the paramedics on the road. It used to be by phone. Now they can start using data to start pushing it to their computers. So it just speeds up the process. It's more accurate. It provides them mapping. It should reduce our overall response time and our accuracy. So less and less errors will happen because of that technology change. That's our capital.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. Can I just, out of interest's sake, ask a little bit about the CPR devices?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I missed that. CPR devices. So CPR devices basically are mechanical devices that could do chest compressions. We've been piloting those And the benefit of them is they do deeper, better compression, so more blood moves. People generally get tired after about 2 minutes, and the effectiveness of CPR isn't that good. So this is supposed to improve that, so the survivability rate increases. There's also a safety factor included in this, in that if we have to transport in the back of an ambulance doing CPR, we have to stand up in the back of the ambulance and do CPR. We're not belted in or anything else like this, which is a high-risk activity. And putting these machines on, it not only allows the medic to be seat belted in, it allows them to manage other things like, as the world progresses, it used to be just do CPR and away you go as fast as you could to the hospital. Now we're starting to run drugs and basically run the codes outside of the hospitals. So it frees up the medic to do other things as well. So safety, better outcomes for the patient, but they're expensive. So we're increasing at slow increments at a time.
Can I just follow up?
Please go ahead.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm chief in Williamstown there, and we send some of our firefighters with you guys sometimes, and I'm assuming that this will be able to eliminate that for the most part if you have one of those on board. And I'm wondering if there should, at some point, when you get enough of them out there, that maybe you guys could come out and kind of go over them with us, make sure that we know how they work, and so if we're there to assist you a little bit, we can feel like we know what's going on with them. I hadn't heard of them before, and it looks very interesting.
And now they're starting to use them. They're really enjoying them. A lot of hands on deck when you have. They're only used when the person is dead. So there's a lot of work, and very short. It's rush. Like within 10 minutes, you have to get things done. So it's a good tool. But we're more than happy to do a presentation.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Lang, and I appreciate the question. In my experience as a volunteer firefighter, or my past experience as a volunteer firefighter, I can attest to what the chief is talking about, the difficulty of applying CPR in a moving vehicle, and I had unfortunate to support someone leaving Dundas Manor just to travel to the Winchester District Memorial Hospital, and short trip. But there are some curves in the road, and it was difficult to manage and to do that. But this, to your point, Chief, it's. I'm glad the question was. Excuse me. I'm glad the question was asked because it does highlight the need to ensure that the proper service can be delivered to the patient. Thank you. Anything further?
Through you, Mr. Warden, that concludes our presentation for today, for the 2023 budget.
Well, thank you, ma'am, and thanks to those presenters, and thanks for bringing us up to speed and outlining the challenge that we all face. Thank you. We'll move into action requests. Madam Clerk, Corporate Services.
Yes, through you for the council donations budget. It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Lang, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the following donations for 2023. St. Lawrence River Institute, $15,000. County Fairs, $18,000. Mobile Crisis Response Team, $120,000. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, $25,000. Miscellaneous, $1,000. And Police Services Board Community Initiatives, $10,000.
Questions, comments? Councillor McGillis.
Too much stuff on the desk. Was there any request from the Habitat for Humanity this year?
Through you, Mr. Warden, yes, I believe they did submit a request during it was in the budget package, and I think it was for $5,000 total.
On that at all?
Through you, Mr. Warden, no, it did not come up as part of our budget deliberations, just the ones that I noted here.
There's $1,000 miscellaneous. Is that $1,000 just in reserves in the event that somebody requests it?
Yes, that's right. We've pulled it from the budget. It can be used at council's discretion throughout the year.
Could I make a suggestion? being at the, with all the hard work they do and the good work they do too as well, I mean, giving homes for, different people that are requesting or having hard times, just especially the way things are today. I thought maybe take that $1,000 and donate that part to the, if the rest of council would agree, to the Habitat for Humanity, because, of course, like any other organization, they're short-funded because of the, the funding that's not as prominent as it was in the past in terms of federal or provincial funding. And I thought maybe it would be a good thing to, or a good idea to submit $1,000 towards them, being that they requested $5,000. Would that, would council, through you, Mr. Warden, would council agree to that?
I guess we had questions, comments, and at this time, we can quickly go around the table and discuss that. I won't express my concern. Thoughts on the proposal by Councillor McGillis? Councillor Gaindel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, I'm agreeable to that. I think we've donated $1,000 to them in the past few budgets as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would support that as well. We've pulled the $1,000 is in the budget. It's available, and it would be better to spend it than have it be a surplus. So I would be in agreement to that.
Excuse my throat. Madam Clerk, how would we proceed with an action request to that effect?
Yeah, sure. If you wanted to do it today through you, Mr. Warden, you could put a motion forward to amend this motion that we just read to change miscellaneous to Habitat for Humanity, if you'd like.
Do I have a mover and a seconder? Okay.
So the amendment, Councillor McGillis, seconded by Councillor Gaydon.
All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, that's carried.
And then the main motion as amended then?
Yes, please.
I've included Habitat for Humanity, so it's in the main motion now as amended, and then we just need to vote on that.
Can we, do we have a mover and seconder to that main motion?
We already have that. It's
We
moved by
have that.
Councillor
We
Densham.
don't need to have them sign off on altering their moving and seconding. Okay, to the question as the action request as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councillor McGillis. We're going to move down to tenders and quotations. And we have Mr. DeHaan and Mr. Jans. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Vino, seconded by Councillor Lang, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry award the joint quotation for blades, cutting edges, and wear parts to White's Wear Parts Limited for a total value of $77,343.28. The joint quotation includes the following municipal partners: SDG, $61,216.77, South Glengarry, $7,839.11, and North Stormont, $8,287.40.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan.
I'll just briefly note that this is the first time I've ever had to bring this to council. It represents some pretty significant cost increase in the products itself, but also maybe putting it on council's radar that it's perhaps a good time to start taking a look at our purchasing policy again, just to take some of these routine things off of what is otherwise a busy agenda. So that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Questions, comments for Mr. DeHaan? Seeing none, all those I'm sorry, Mr. Lang. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you, and I'm not sure it's for Mr. DeHaan, but just, and you'd made a note in a couple of these about increasing our purchasing limits. And I'm wondering if I can ask Madam CEO, like, Cornwall's budget, is it similar size to ours in overall money spent, and if what the relation is? And I'm wondering what, just as an example, what they would have for purchasing limits, if you might know that.
So through you, Mr. Warden, the city's budget is maybe a little bit bigger than the county's budget, but from a purchasing perspective, items below $150,000 that have been issued through a proper procurement process do not come to council for council's award. So we'd still follow a proper policy with respect to, whether we're getting quotes, tenders, RFPs, but up to 150 is managed by administration. I have had some brief discussions with Mr. DeHaan, also with Mrs. Russell. We've talked about it, so I think that it would be our intent this year to bring back a revised purchasing policy to council. I think it's just a matter of updating it, because as times have changed, things have gone up in value, and we probably could amend that to, as Mr. DeHaan's comments were, to have some of these items no longer be on a council agenda.
Thank you very much. That's kind of what I had vaguely remembered. I know we had done some work with the South Glengarry through the airport, and we had used Cornwall's purchasing ability because it was much easier and quicker to do some things. Because ours is very low. I think it's like 30 or 40,000. I'm not sure, but yeah, it gives us something to think about. And if we're at 50,000 and they're 150,000, we maybe need to readjust a little bit.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Gaino.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, just to follow up on Councillor Lang's comment, I just wanted to note that what we do in South Stormont, I think we have a $100,000 limit, but we just provide council, sorry, with the monthly key information report that kind of outlines some of those purchases. So if there were any questions, council's aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Mr. DeHaan. Oh, I'm sorry, the resolution.
It's moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Williams, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry award the joint quotation for street signs to Stinson Equipment Limited for a total value of $50,073.40. The joint quotation includes the following municipal partners: United Counties of SDG, $32,961.95; City of Cornwall, $3,557; North Dundas, $7,470.95; South Dundas, $1,057.20; South Stormont, $2,232.60; South Glengarry, $2,796.70.
I think it might be self-explanatory, unless you have something you want to add, Mr. DeHaan. No? Questions, comments then? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Vino, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Wagger and Corput Weed Control Incorporated for treatment on municipal roadsides at their price of $33,670 plus chemicals and HST. The joint tender includes the following: United Counties, $10,500 plus chemicals; North Dundas, $3,290 plus chemicals; South Dundas, $4,130 plus chemicals; North Stormont, $4,760 plus chemicals; South Stormont, $3,080 plus chemicals; North Glengarry, $5,180 plus chemicals; South Glengarry, $2,730 plus chemicals, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. DeHaan, comments?
Just very quickly, one change we made to the contract this year compared to previous years is that we required the contractor to have GPS tracking in their unit. That was some feedback we got from local municipalities that it was something that was available 2 tenders ago, just by virtue of the contractors that we had and the equipment they had available, and we kind of recognized after last year that that was something that that information was actually quite valuable for us, so we made it a requirement. But beyond that, pretty straightforward, and the expectation is this type of work the work itself will start sometime early May is typically when we start, but we do like to make sure we've got our contractor ready to go beforehand.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Questions, comments? Councillor Williams, followed by Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just wondering if you happen to know why North Glengarry's at the 5,180 is significantly higher than the other municipalities. Are we putting twice as much on our roadsides, or do we have twice as many roadsides?
Yeah, it's strictly a kilometer cost, so the higher value means more kilometers compared to others. So you'd have to, if there's a question about that, I can certainly work through Tim, but I'd assume you could probably do that more efficiently than I could.
For sure, I'll talk to Tim about it.
Okay.
I mean, I've spoken about this before, and I'm not a big fan of spraying, and I like to see the least amount of spraying possible. I will bring that up with our Public Works Director. Thank you.
Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Ben, when do we advertise so people can put signs out in the event, as what Carmen Williams said, she's not a fan of spraying, in the event that they don't want spraying in front of their properties? When does that happen about?
That we'll be putting out press releases and social media posts within the next, I would say, next month or so. We like to do it about 3+ weeks before we expect to start, just that way it's fresh in people's minds. But I can tell you too that I've been contacted by some residents already who are interested in making sure that they're identified and that they know what's going on. So it's out there already, but we will do a concerted effort to put that information out to the public within the next couple weeks. Well, within a month from now, for sure, we'll be putting that out.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. That question leads me to wonder about the type of sign that would be placed and the information that would be relayed to your department, and how would that be managed?
So the way that works through you, Mr. Warden, is that we do have the ability on our website that people can click on their property and identify their property as an area where they're putting up a sign. We also, on our website, which we share with the local municipalities, is give direction with respect to the recommended size of the sign, location of the sign relative to the roadside. When the work's taking place, we have inspectors who are watching, looking out for signs, attempting to assist the contractor identifying those locations where signs are installed. So there's multiple ways that people can, notify us that signs are out in the right of way.
Thank you, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. Being new to this council, I'd just like to know what our policy is on this. So it sounds like if people want to put out a no spray sign, we're not going to spray in front of their property. I want to be clear that it's not their property, it's our property as counties. Are we making sure then that person is going to keep those weeds down or do whatever trimming needs to be done there? Or are we just not spraying those properties? And I finally found something that Carmen and I maybe disagree on. I thought we agreed on almost everything, but I am in favor of spraying. I want these weeds kept down, and I know the farm community does as well. I'm just wondering if a person doesn't want spraying in front of the property, are they obliged then to look after those weeds and manage them?
As it stands right now, no, there's no obligation for the residents to be doing something to eliminate the weeds that are in front of their right-of-way where they've identified no spraying. It's something that if council's interested, we do have we'll call it it's called the roadside spraying policy. I might have the exact wording incorrect or whatnot, but I can bring that back to council in April just so council can look at it, and if they want to, maybe amend it, because that is, there are other counties across Ontario that do require residents to look after the roadsides if they elect to put up no spray signs or they don't want spraying in front of their house. So there are different models out there, and at the time that policy was created, we did have that discussion around the council table, but certainly I recognize it's a new council, and if there's an appetite to revisit that, I've got no objection to that whatsoever, and be happy to entertain some discussions on how to move forward or how to do things differently.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Lang. And yes, there is an appetite to have that information provided, Mr. DeHaan. And to your point, we do have many new members around the table, and their voices need to be heard and their thoughts expressed. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Ben, just a quick question. So people can call into the township on the website or whatever, I presume, and plot their land and report that to the counties then. Is that information then given to the contractor as well?
It is, but at the end of the day, and this is what we continue to remind people, we can pass that information along. It's up to them to make sure there's a sign out on the right of way and that they're checking it, regularly to make sure that sign's there, because ultimately that's what, if you can imagine, I can't remember how many thousand kilometers we're spraying. For us to be able to discreetly identify a location just through mapping itself is impossible. So it's another form of awareness for the contractor. But at the end of the day, what matters is putting that sign out on the right of way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manley. Councillor Dencham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. Ben, do we have a sense as to how many people actually put a sign up in terms of percentage of kilometers? Is it significant or?
Through the past, it's been very insignificant. There are definitely signs out there, and I'm sure as council starts to drive around in the spring, you'll see them when you start looking for them. But very few and far between. By and large, there's if it adds up to a kilometer, that would probably be it. There's not a lot of them.
Because I just want to be careful if we're looking to report on this in future, how much effort it's going to be for a tiny potential amount of value. That'd be my only caution on that.
Thank you, Councillor Dencham. Councillor McGillis.
Being we're on the spring, question. If somebody already has their frontage of the property cut, do they still spray after it's cut when they go by?
So if the frontage is maintained like a lawn, so it's cut, maintained, no, we don't spray that. That's something the contractor automatically does not spray. Again, to be ultimately cautious, I always recommend if it's not a front lawn, like a front lawn, but it is something they're regularly cutting and they don't want spraying, we put up a sign. That's the best way to guarantee it.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. I know, Ben, we talked about this earlier, but for any areas that are oversprayed, is there a clear process that a homeowner or a property owner goes through to claim or want to potentially claim for any overspraying? Recognizing, I know it's a contractor's responsibility, but just regarding the process of a claim. I know last year, I believe, there was a little bit of an issue with in South Dundas, and reviewing the council meetings online, it was quite a back and forth that I'd rather avoid if there was a good process on the claim. So I'm just wondering if you can enlighten us on that.
Generally speaking, whenever there's an issue or a potential issue with respect to the work that has been completed, the landowners contact either the county or the local municipality, then it gets brought up to the county. We review it with the contractor, check our records for wind speed that day, location, just to confirm that it was, perhaps because there are instances where even though the contractor's spraying, all of a sudden they get hit with a gust of wind that their reader wasn't reading 10 seconds before, 15 seconds before. So to your point, Councillor St. Pierre, perhaps we can be better on our website with an actual process and provide residents that information, because it is not readily available. It's just more generally through an initial contact through the county or the local municipality. So point well taken. That's something we'll add to our website on that matter.
So I think we've had a good discussion, and it's been this discussion highlights the importance in our community about care and concern about the roadsides, on both sides, the agricultural side and the homeowner side. I think we had a good opportunity to express our thoughts to Mr. DeHaan. But if anyone has further thoughts and concerns, would they please just contact Mr. DeHaan by email? Is that suitable? But we look forward to some of the things that were discussed today coming to us in the near future, so we can have maybe not a further discussion, but a better understanding of the process going forward, and make sure that the public understands the process as well. It is, as we remember, and as Councillor St. Pierre remarked, it is an issue, maybe one of the bigger issues that we have discussed in the past, and we need to come to a conclusion that we have the process in the best way possible to present to the public. Madam Clerk, the bridges. Oh, I'm sorry. The resolution, all those in favor? I got off track there. All those, any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Madam Clerk, the bridge inspections.
Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the proposal for professional engineering services from Jacobs Consultancy Canada Incorporated to complete the 2023 biennial bridge inspections for an upset limit of $117,245 plus HST, and authorize the Director of Transportation Services to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract. The work includes the following partners: SDG $59,953.58, Mohawk Council of Akwesasne $254.26, South Dundas $8,449.95, South Stormont $8,148.17, North Glengarry $19,615.95, South Glengarry $20,823.09.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions, comments for Mr. DeHaan? No one's wondering about $254? I think of Councillor Williams' concerned about the $5,000. Does this reflect in the same manner that it's a very small bridge? Thank you. We've all heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. I do want to ask Mr. DeHaan, is this the first time that we've had the opportunity to have the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne join in on the tender process?
Actually, they've been part of that one for many, many years. At this point, we've partnered with them multiple times on bridge inspections, and certainly any. They have attended our joint tender meetings in the past, but it's been a while since we've actually seen them. But great opportunity to work with our neighbors for sure, and we really appreciate they're excellent group to work with.
Well, to that, and we've already asked the question, so I'm good. To that, Madam CAO, and I've been fortunate to tag along with our CAO and have opportunity to meet some of the members of the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, and we're making early plans on joining them at a council meeting or some of their council meetings. So, would I be remiss to mention the opportunity to tender with us?
Not at all. I encourage it. The more the better it is for everybody. So absolutely.
Thank you. And I believe we're going to move on to corrugated steel pipes.
It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Vino, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Atlantic Industries Limited for corrugated steel pipe at their unit prices totaling $274,912.75 plus HST. The joint tender includes the following: SDG $113,770.18, City of Cornwall $6,335.71, South Glengarry $42,681.72, South Stormont $59,573.26, South Dundas $40,132.91, North Dundas $12,418.97, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Questions, comments? Mr. DeHaan? Nothing? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Storm sewers, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Vino, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Storm Sewer Condition Assessment Program from Aquatech Solutions Incorporated at their unit prices totaling $134,414 plus HST. The municipal partners included in the joint tender are United Counties of SDG $81,684, South Stormont $11,172, North Glengarry $42,557.20, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to award an additional $19,000 in work through a scope of change request.
Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. The hot mix tender.
It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Vino, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender from Cornwall Gravel Company Limited for hot mix paving and other related works at their unit prices totaling $7,866,344.75 plus HST. The joint tender includes the following: the United Counties of SDG, $6,721,260; the Township of North Glengarry, $822,997.25; and the Township of South Stormont, $322,087.50, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Ben, is the GIP paving, is that is that the company that bought Coco's? Yes. Okay.
Anything further? Yes, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. Thanks, Mr. Don. Can you give me an approximate increase that this would be over last year's pricing?
Approximately 28%.
28? And I'm going to ask the same question when you come to the cold in place, so if you wanted to do it now.
You might as well do it. Do you know? I didn't calculate that one. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Gaino.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, a question for Ben. In the report, there was a mention of removing one section from the contract. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, we had, we had hoped, we're still early in where the AC market's going to end up by the end of the construction season. We had hoped to see some aggressive pricing, particularly if council recalls, we put all of this in the 4-year plan. What we did was we lumped all of that area, so essentially the contractor shows up once, puts their equipment down, and they're paving the whole work we're intending to do this year. And what we had hoped to see was some really good pricing, giving us an opportunity to address an adjacent piece or give council the opportunity to pave an adjacent piece of roadway that was beside the work we had included in the 4-year plan and that council was aware of. So we were hoping to give council some positive options, and of course we're faced with a circumstance where it's not positive options. We're really tight on money. So that's the adjacent section. I want to say it's the section of County Road 43 which is east of where we're ending this year. So I think it's going between 11 and Finch is what we were looking. Was that the extra section, Mike? I'm sorry, I don't remember it off the top of my head.
12 and 15.
Between 12 and 15. Okay, so they were.
Finch and Avamore.
Yeah, Finch and Avamore Road. So that was one that we had hoped to give council as here's a great thing we can do with some extra money if council's interested, but we're just unfortunately not there.
Further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And the cold in place recycling, Madam Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Williams, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Roto Mill Incorporated for the cold-in-place recycling with expanded asphalt and other related works on various county roads at their unit prices totaling $4,424,478.45 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Mr. DeHaan, anything to add to that?
I know Mike is
Is he computing?
Yeah, no worries. He's very hard. He's trying very hard to just calculate a rough increase. So no pressure, obviously.
Mr. Jans, do you have that number yet? Councillor Lang is waiting with bated breath. Yes, while that goes on, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. In the meantime, it looks like you've also pulled some work out of this one as well. Okay.
I don't think, I think I can answer that one, and I'll let Mike confirm this, but I don't believe we actually have to remove anything from this contract to do the work that we intended to do this year. Is that right, Mike? We didn't have any provisional that we have to remove. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. There you go.
And so your answer here is 22% on Golden Place.
So comparable, which I think makes sense given the market and the type of work we're talking about.
Any further questions, comments from Mr. DeHaan? Seeing none, we all heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Mr. Jans, at this time we're going to move into bylaws. Mr. Young.
It's moved by Councillor Vino, seconded by Councillor McGillis, that bylaw number 5388, being a bylaw to authorize the sale of property located at 607 St. Lawrence Street, Winchester, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Warden Fraser and Council. This bylaw is to sell property, a home in Winchester that's been used as a shelter for the last 35 or so years. Council previously declared the surplus at the last meeting, and we drafted up an agreement to purchase and sale. This would authorize the warden and clerk to sign that agreement and transfer the property. This will help the shelter to be able to get some much needed grants for future improvements and even expansions.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Questions, comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Young. Ms. Russell. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor McGillis, seconded by Councillor Gaydon, that bylaw number 5389, being a bylaw to establish property tax ratios for the county and for municipal purposes for the year 2023, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Good morning, Council. So the bylaw to establish the 2023 tax ratios really has no financial impact on the local municipalities. It's just to establish the tax ratios that'll be used for 2023. These ratios have actually remained unchanged for quite some time and a lot of years. So this is just also in support of our 2023 budget and the tax rates we calculated through that process.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Densham, that bylaw number 5390, being a bylaw for the purpose of adopting and raising the general upper tier levy for the year 2023, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Okay.
Ms. Russell.
So based on our budget discussions in February of this year, this bylaw establishes the tax rates for 2023, resulting in a tax revenue of $55,140.81 based on that meeting. Also based on that meeting, the property taxes will see a 3.72% increase in tax rates, which is an increase of almost $2.9 million in revenues from 2022. So once approved, this bylaw is then forwarded on to the local municipalities to be included with their tax bills, as the county portions are included at the local level.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Questions, comments from members of council? Well, I'll have a comment, not a question. I just want to thank your staff, I thank the council members, and thank everyone involved in the process. 3.72, in light of some of my lower tier councils that we all work with in SDG, 372 is a very low number, especially in this environment. It speaks to the staff, but it also speaks to the differences between lower tier and upper tier, and that's understandable. We have other things that we manage, but I want to thank once again everyone for their consideration of the impact of the tax rate to the public in SDG. Saying that, we've all heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? See none is carried. Madam Clerk, fees and charges.
It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McGillis, that bylaw number 5391, being a bylaw to adopt a fees and charges bylaw, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Ms. Russell?
So Peter and I will both speak to this. The fees and charges bylaw, we annually adjust for CPI when it reaches a $5 amount or greater of the fees. So the fees have been adjusted by that amount for the transportation services, which is mostly in Schedule A. It ranges from $5 to $30, the changes based on that inflationary index. But I'll leave Peter to explain the fees and charges for the planning and tourism. One thing that I did want to note to council, it's on Schedule B under the tourism costs. There is a typo where the child is not $60. It should be $6. It's been amended and it will be adjusted on the signed copy. We do know children are very valuable. However, should be reflected as $6. It's been changed in the proper document. I'll leave Peter explain the planning.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Council. So in terms of the jail fees, it's a relatively small increase. It's above inflation, but it reflects the study that was completed last year, which noted that compared to some other attractions in Eastern Ontario that are similar, we're undercharging by about 75%. So really what we're looking at is the film production rentals, which usually, they book a large portion of the jail. They require staff resources, security, all things like that. So we're looking at that fee is larger, and then a slight $1 to $2 per person for some of the admission fees. So not the full 75%, but something reasonable for our area. It's not Alcatraz or the Kingston Pen, but it's a nice facility that we can put more money into and increase visitors. As well, planning reflects not just CPI, but the direction from council during budget regarding cost recovery for any environmental planning services. So there's also a flat fee in addition to the inflationary fee that's included in the bylaw.
Thank you, Ms. Russell and Mr. Young. Questions, comments? Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. The CPI adjustment, is that done strictly on the current year, or is it cumulative since its last price increase?
I can answer that. So what we do is we use the CPI annually, but we only update it when it reaches that $5 increment change. So we do accumulate the changes year over year until it reaches that cap.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything further on fees? Mr. Young, you did mention the cost recovery on certain things, as costs do escalate, that does need to be considered, and I appreciate it being considered because I know at the lower tier, at our end, cost recovery in the planning and building enforcement department. It is a topic that needs to be discussed and has been discussed, and it is something that I think as we evolve, we need to move off the general tax base for some of these services that are offered that people, rightly so, and are welcome to take advantage of. And I appreciate hearing that because it's something that we need to focus on as we move forward. Thank you. We all have heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Mr. Dahan. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Williams, that bylaw number 5392, being a bylaw for the purpose of establishing an encroachment agreement between the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry and Carolyn Madden and Barbara Cottenham at 5756 County Road 42, South Stormont, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Mr. DeHaan.
Pretty standard encroachment that we sometimes have to work with the landowner on as part of a severance that's taking place. So nothing out of the ordinary here, boilerplate agreement, and this will help to finalize the severance.
Thank you. Questions, comments for Mr. DeHaan? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Before Madam Clerk reads the consent agenda resolution, do any directors or managers have anything they'd like to add? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McGillis, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Boards and committees. The Warden's report. Madam CAO has some information that she'll provide when the two of us were in Napanee recently. But as the Warden, I had the opportunity to fly solo without Madam CAO, and I attended a meeting, I believe, substituted for her at a Via Rail meeting in Cornwall, and there was discussions held with Via Rail principals, the real estate director, I believe, from Canada, Canadian real estate director, a local real estate manager for Via Rail Canada, some other members of that corporate structure from Via Rail, as well as members from the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne, City of Cornwall, our MP and myself, and it was talking about the viability of the Cornwall, excuse me, the Cornwall station, Cornwall Via station, and there was a positive discussion with a positive outlook for the outcome of and viability of that station. As for drastic changes to it, it is a big corporation and things do move slowly, but they understood our message and they're supportive of the efforts. Madam CAO, do you want to continue with the Warden's report, please?
Certainly. So Warden Fraser and I attended an EOWC meetings just at the tail end of the week before last. And in those meetings, the wardens wanted to identify their priorities for 2023. Three fairly significant areas. One is certainly housing. You've heard about the 7 and 7 project. So the CIOs within the Wardens Group and the Wardens Group will be working through that initiative over the next 7 years. So that's 7,000 affordable units in 7 years across Eastern Ontario, with hopes that with also working with the private sector, it might generate another 21,000 units, so 28,000 units in total. So we're in early stages for planning for that, but the Wardens Caucus will take that item back to AMO as well as a delegation to look for further support that will be required from the province. Another fairly significant priority for the Wardens Caucus is with respect to long-term care. As you have heard, I think through discussions today, and we were attending a health summit a couple of weeks ago, recruitment remains a challenge. And also, I think the complexity of dealing with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. So the Wardens Group is going to continue to advocate on behalf of the municipal long-term care homes. Another very important priority amongst the Wardens Group is paramedic services. You heard comments from Chief Lister today about offload delays. That is of concern to the Wardens Group as well. And similarly, Chief Lister also spoke to the community paramedicine program. Cornwall SDG has participated in that program for several years now, but it's a program that funding gets allocated to on a year-by-year basis. So the funding is 100%. It is one of the most successful programs I think that we could have within that group. It keeps people in the residences at home. It allows safe follow-up to patient care after people have been discharged from the hospital. So it is really an excellent tool to support our healthcare network and provide the right care to the patients in need. But we want that to be committed ongoing. And so that's part of the Warden's Caucus initiatives as well. And as well as an overall modernization of the paramedic services system. So dispatch is done differently throughout the province. There needs to be more consistency to that platform and a better tool that is launched to all areas. Those are the three main items amongst the Wardens Group. And I think we'll have more information that as publications are put forward, I'll make sure that we share that information with council members here on a go-forward basis.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and thank you for reminding me about the health summit that was held in South Stormont. Councillor McGillis, in his role as mayor, hosted us, and it was I believe it was the first of its kind in SDG to have a summit where different members of our healthcare team within SDG, Cornwall and Mohawk from Akwesasne were able to come together. And yes, I see Councillor Densham was in attendance. I believe it was Councillor Densham in attendance, Councillor McGillis and myself, I believe, from this table. And Councillor Broad, thank you very much. He sat, yes, right next to me almost. It was a good summit. It brought us together. It made us understand that we have a common issue, and that's the need of support, financial and provincial support in the financial end, but just understanding the challenges that we face in SDG and the MCA, and I believe in Prescott Russell is probably very similar. This area of Eastern Ontario has challenges that are unlike challenges faced in larger urban areas. And that was a very good meeting where it was a commitment of sorts that we were going to band together and join forces to ensure that the healthcare in Eastern Ontario, in our area specifically, has a greater chance of attracting professionals to serve us in many ways, be it paramedics, be it nurse practitioners, be it PSWs, be it nurses, doctors. Anything that's related to healthcare was talked about, and the benefit of us working together, being collaborative, should have a positive outcome for us. So, I'm sorry. To that, was there anything else, Madam CAO?
No, I think that was a good summary. Thank you.
Thank you. The Joint Liaison Committee, any comments? No comments. The Library Board, Councillor McDonald?
I don't believe we met in between now and the previous meeting, but we have one on March 30th.
Thank you. And I do have an update. We had a discussion at our last Library Board meeting that we would have a mission to go to Dalkeith and have a visit at Dalkeith. And Ms. Franklin, and I'm gapping on, thank you, Mr. Gervais, myself, and Joanne McCaslin, some members of the Library Board, had the opportunity to go and have a good visit and gain a better understanding of Dalkeith Plus, Library and more. And there will be an update delivered at the next Library Board meeting about that. Police Services Board, any update?
Yes, Mr. Warden.
Councillor McGillis.
Thank you. Dennis Fife, he made the announcement at the end of last year that he would be retiring after serving on the board for over 22 years. And of course, the board thanked him very much for his long service and his dedication to the board. And I think, did we send anything to thank him through the council? Do you think we should? That's a nice recommendation. Because Dennis, he was a former councillor here for many years too as well. I think the longest standing SDG councillor that I recall. And I was fortunate enough to have Jim Warrant nominate me for chair, and Councillor McDonald, Jamie McDonald, he seconded it. And of course I was lucky enough to be voted as the chairs. I'm looking forward to that position for the next year. The end of 2022, returned between, I'd say, October and December, the calls, the OPP said the calls remain constant. Stolen vehicles occurrences have increased by more than 25% across the province, and most are being stopped and recovered along the 401 corridor. 138, Highway 138 still continues to be a good focal point of their proactive enforcement. So they're spending a lot of time on 138 because there's still many drivers that are not following the rules. And just a reminder, Kimberly sent out an anti-human trafficking task force meeting coming up on March 23rd. If anybody from council can make it, I think it's important that I won't be here. I'll be on holidays. I wish I could be there, but I think it's important that we get a few councillors to go there to oversee what's going on in that respect. He's I'm thinking of I think it was Inspector Mark Hemrick. It's they brought that up a few times over the last few meetings with respect to human trafficking, and I think it's not getting any better. It's continuing and possibly getting worse in terms of the amount of work that's involved from the different police forces. Also, they had 4 members last year that retired from the unit. So they left, and they started interviews in January, and there was over 84 years experience that left, so a lot of experience gone. But they're working towards hiring more people, and hopefully that, within the auxiliary police, there's some people there that be willing to move up because they'll have the experience to do that. And I know some of them myself personally, and I think there would be some great auxiliary police people that would be very happy to do that for the rest of their career. So I know the auxiliary now, they do a lot of work. They put in a lot of hours. I know Al Sege, he retired not too long ago, and he had 40 years as an auxiliary. So that's they lost some experience there too. So he was one of the volunteer gala. We have a gala every year at South Stormont, and he was the volunteer inductee for I'd say 3 years ago. So that man, he did a lot of work over the years. And I think that's about all in terms of the interviews and everything like that. So we're looking forward to four more people joining the force.
Thank you, Councillor. Eastern Ontario Health Unit, Councillor Williams or Councillor Lang?
I'll start, and then you can jump in anytime. With regards to COVID, infections are now considered moderate to low, with a 10% positivity rate. There are less ICU admissions. However, Omicron was significantly more contagious, but less severe. So even though a lot of people had it's not creating as many hospitalizations. Vaccination is still very important and can happen at various different clinics, and the COVID will likely become a seasonal, similar to the flu, and will eventually require a yearly vaccine. Then with regards to funding, the province is always looking at new funding models, which is always a concern. There's been talk of moving municipalities from a 25% responsibility for health units to 30%. This is something that we have been lobbying against, because that would be a significant increase for all the municipal partners. So we're considering sending a letter to the province and with a possible delegation, and it's something maybe we should think about following up. Like once we do that at the board level, then SDG may want to consider doing a similar sort of thing. Councillor Lang?
Thank you, Carmen. Through you, Mr. Warden. I'd really like to emphasize that it doesn't sound like much to go from 25% to 30%. And I don't understand how the math works exactly, but 25% to 30% takes us from about 2.5 million to 4 million or more. So it's almost doubling what the counties would have to put in, or the municipalities would have to put in. So I'm going to have to learn more about it. It wasn't explained fully then, but it is a significant increase. It's coming close to doubling the money that we would be, on the hook for. So I think we do need to be on top of it. And Dr. Paul said he had spoke to the Premier himself about it. He thought that maybe, there was some interest in maybe not changing it, but I mean, I don't want to take anything for granted. I think we should be on that. A couple other things that I just had jotted down, just for interest's sake. Historically, health unit had been at about 220 staff, had dropped down to 180 staff, and are saying that it's not really sustainable in the long run. But because of COVID, obviously things changed. We're up to 400 staff temporarily for COVID. So as that COVID winds down and comes off, we're just wondering where we're going to end up in the staffing department, hoping that closer to the 220 than the 180, because they didn't think the 180 was sustainable. And just another note, the refugee thing is on their plate, and it takes up time and so forth. And so we're all aware of this. And just a number they'd thrown out, there's over 1,000 refugees in Cornwall at the moment. That's all I had to add. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillors Williams and Lang. Does Councillor Lang mention the refugees, the asylum seekers, I imagine we're referring to? I guess we haven't had a meeting in between, but I did have an opportunity to sit in at the OPG Education Center, Training Center, and sit in with a representative from IRCC. They're dealing with the asylum seekers, Roxham Road. At that time, that was a Sunday, quickly organized meeting. There's 42 of us in attendance, representatives again from right across our area, and our area being SDG, but again, Akwesasne, and the city of Cornwall. There was 1,400 identified to be in Cornwall, 1,400 asylum seekers seeking refuge in Cornwall. And again, I think that caught a lot of us at that meeting off guard. We were unaware of the impact. We all heard about Roxham Road. We knew there was an issue with Roxham Road, and the crossing that, the unmanned illegal crossing location. But whenever the healthcare in our area started talking about the impact on our system, and I'm not being negative about the impact. These people are seeking asylum, and they need our care. But it was off-putting that there was a lack of consideration to bring us up to speed about the challenges we'll face, budgetary challenges, the impact on the well-being of our healthcare workers, of this influx of people that have migrated to this area without any healthcare in the process and in dire need of drastic levels of healthcare and other types of social support. Not a lot came out of that meeting, except about, and Dr. Paul was at that meeting, and he had some thoughts that he expressed. But I think the only thing we really got out of that meeting was a commitment that they would pay attention to informing us of these challenges in the future. But just a note, I say 1,400 people seeking asylum in Cornwall. Cornwall is roughly 45,000 people. This really gets to me. And 1,400 asylum seekers. City of Cornwall, 45,000, roughly. Ottawa had 702 asylum seekers with a population of roughly 1 million. It really is enlightening how they respect what took place, and they didn't see the need to make better use of a larger center with more opportunity for facilities, accommodation, healthcare, and hospitals. And it was a stark reminder of where we are. Saying that, Glen Stordon Lodge. And I look at Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, nothing to report. We have a meeting on Friday. We've had no meeting since our last time that we were together at this council.
Thank you. St. Lawrence River Institute, Councillor Gaindo.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Nothing to report. The first meeting will take place on May 17th.
Thank you. If I may, I have a note from Councillor Bergeron. She wasn't able to attend, but she did send some information about, if I can type in here, about her most recent meeting at the Raisin South Nation Source Water Protection Board. She passes along that there will be some minor changes in the areas. There will be changes to regulations on salt use on roads in water protection areas, and changes to salt uses at businesses, parking lots, and accumulated snow piles. And changes mean a reduction in usage through regulation. And there's also concern regarding liabilities discussed about slips and falls because of the reduction in the use of salt. And the regulations will apply down to the storage of 20 kilogram bags of salt. So changes are afoot there. Municipal Advisory, Algonquin Land Claim, I have nothing to report. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The annual general meeting for the Agri-Food Network is coming up March the 30th, and it's going to be at Stonehouse Vineyards, that's what it's called? I just went kind of a blank there. Stonehouse Vineyards in Dalkeith. And I think you all received an email from Kimberly inviting you to that annual general meeting. I encourage any of you that are able to come. First of all, it's a lovely location. There's Law Hill, sorry, it's in Law Hill. It's a lovely location. There will be refreshments there. And the executive director, Louis, will be unveiling the new website, which is excellent. It'll really serve its members much more effectively. You'll also get a taste of some of the wine that's at the venue, and it's a real opportunity to find out more of what's going on in the organization, since just today we approved $25,000 this year for the organization, and I'm sure you all want to know what's going on. So it goes from 3:30 to 5:30. If you want more information, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thanks.
Thank you. Regional Incentives Program. I'm not sure who's going to speak to it. Councillor Densham.
There's been no meeting yet, but there is one organized for the end of March, early April. And from what I understand, there's an intake of 7 applicants, and we look forward to seeing those.
Thank you. And so look through this. I think I'd like to take a 5-minute bio break at this point, Madam Clerk. back. We're going to move into key information, and we're going to have a change in the flow of the items. We're going to move 11.2 to be above 11.1, and I'm going to ask the CAO and the clerk to speak to the Ad Hoc Rural Education Committee.
Thank you. Through you, Warden Fraser. So during our last meeting at our last council term, the last council did put in place a terms of reference for an ad hoc rural education committee. This was a strategic priority of the last term of council, championing, advocating for rural education across SDG, and they thought that to continue this and formalize it and to continue to push forward with this file, that they would formalize their working group into a formal committee of council. So the terms of reference is before you today, and we were just hoping to get a little feedback from council. If you wanted to proceed, we can reach out to your local CAOs, and you can submit us your nominees for that committee, and then we can get our first meeting scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions, comments, thoughts? Councillor Lang, followed by Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. And I appreciate the previous council putting this together and having it ready to go. I know in the report it mentioned maybe waiting to strategic planning. I would prefer to get it up and running sooner than later. We all know that there's been some chatter at the provincial level from the school boards wanting to get rid of the moratorium. So I'm all in favor of getting it up and running as soon as possible, and would be highly in favor of that.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I fully agree with Councillor Lang, especially after reading the media release that was included in our package. To be honest with you, I found that quite alarming. My concern is that we're going to have the provincial government using the broad brush approach all over again, and you know, what's good for the urban centres they think is good for rural Ontario, and it just isn't. We need a rural education strategy that looks after our own backyard, and I think the only way to do that is for us to continue to lobby for that. So I think it's a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Other thoughts? Councillor Densham.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Warden, that this is critical. A lot of communities, this can be extremely impactful on many of the rural communities, and I think I see a lot of parent groups and schools trying to collaborate in the process and just not having a voice, and I think we need to be able to support them through this.
Thank you for your thoughts. So to that, unless there's others that would like to weigh in on the need to, if I may be so bold, the need to ensure that this ad hoc committee gets up and running, as Councillor Lang stated. I look around and I think of the past committee. We did have great champions on that committee, and I'm looking forward to the next committee. I'm not suggesting there's going to be great changes in the membership, but I think there are some members from here, and we do have some thoughts about good champions outside of this room. So we need to get that up and going. So whatever steps need to be taken, Madam Clerk or Madam CAO, can we ensure that those steps are put in place? And to your point, Councillor Williams, that was a stunner to read that thought about removing the moratorium, I believe. Again, it speaks to where we are and how people view Eastern Ontario. It's a challenge. The next item, the strategic planning session. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. We put a report in front of council to talk about strategic planning, and we thought we wanted to try and identify a date as well as seek council's direction if they'd like to proceed with Susan Gibson, who it's my understanding was the facilitator the last time for county council. I've heard very, very good things about her facilitation. I know recently she's also worked with North Glengarry. We've put in a few dates, looking at the month of April with good roads, and we have our road tour that we've planned, plus council meeting. We thought we'd look at dates in May and June. if these dates are not good for members of council, we can look at some other dates as well. And then we're also, I think, trying to determine a location to do it maybe off-site. So we will be planning that as well once we get a date identified. We've attached the previous strategic plan from council in the agenda. I think that a one-day session would be sufficient, maybe not even a full day, but I think one day would be sufficient for our needs. Happy to take any questions or if there's any feedback from council.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. I'm in favor of everything there. The date, as far as the dates go, leaning towards the May 25th or 26th, just because South Glengarry has strategic planning on the 9th and 10th of June, so we would end up with 3 days in a row of all-day strategic planning. Might be too much for us. So I'm leaning towards May 25th or 26th, but we could likely do any of the three.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Densham.
I don't know whether you want to take a straw poll here, Mr. Warden, or not, but the 26th or the 8th are better for us. But the other question I have, and I would really appreciate hearing from some of the councillors who were a part of the previous strategic meeting. I'm all about return on investment, I guess, on this, and whether or not you feel that based on the strategic priorities that were put forward from this session last time, do you feel that good momentum has been achieved as a result of this? Sometimes these exercises can be interesting documents that end up sitting on a shelf and we don't do a whole lot with, but I'd love to hear the feedback of the councillors who took part in this in the past and whether it was good value for effort and money.
Would anyone like to respond to Councillor Densham's query about success of the investment? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, well, first of all, the facilitator was excellent. Suzanne, she's very dynamic. She's full of energy and ideas, and she really helps move you through the process in a very effective way of going, okay, 101 ideas down to a really sort of manageable action plan that is doable, which is important. You know, there's no sense in having action items that aren't achievable, and she's really able at doing that. In terms of, you know, this past strategic plan, yeah, I thought I was very happy with it. I thought that there were some items in there that we actually achieved, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for delivering that message. Further comments, concerns? 25th, 26th have been proposed. 26th, 8th, I believe, Councillor Densham, you said. I look at my calendar, and I'm more in favor of the 25th. Other thoughts? Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, just looking at the dates, the 25th or the 26th would work as well for South Dundas.
Councillor Gaindo.
Both the 25th and the 26th works for South Stormont.
Councillor Williams.
25th, 26th.
I hope the 25th works for you, Councillor Densham. Thank you. Yeah. The next item, Mr. Dahan, the next key information is the Greater Loan with Municipality of St. Pierre of South Dundas. Mr. Dahan.
Thank you. The information's provided in the report to council. It's, I guess we're just looking for some feedback or support more than anything that this makes sense to council. It's similar to to what we have done with South Stormont over the past year. Local municipality in a little bit of a bind, we'll say, and we've got the resources to be able to help that. And just maybe also on top of that, we'll come back to council with the formal agreement, but we just wanted to make sure that was, council was supportive of working with the local municipality and sharing some of the resources that our taxpayers have invested.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. This practice, while not quite unusual, is infrequent, and as you spoke, it's in need of a lower tier needing the support temporarily, and the logistics are worked out, the insurances are worked out, everything is covered. It's a well planned process, and I know there were some questions, maybe not of concern, just for information. Is there anything further you can provide about the process so that we do have new members, so everyone's comfortable with what goes on?
Sure. For us, this is often equipment that's, from the county's perspective, we're done with it, whether it's towards the end of the life cycle or surplus for us. And this is the exact example with this grader. It was intended to be a surplus unit that we were going to sell to auction. It's an older machine. It's not I want to say 20. Yeah, so it's a very, it's an older machine, but it's still in good working condition. From the county's perspective, we've really used it to grade shoulders, so it's not working very hard when compared to a lot of the grading work that a lot of the local municipalities are doing on their gravel shoulders or even in winter maintenance activities. So for us, it's a well-used machine. It's in excellent shape. What we always try and do with these types of agreements with the local municipalities is just make sure at the end of it that the value of that piece of equipment really hasn't changed for us whenever we do surplus it and sell it. And that's the case here. We're looking, because of the type of use that's going to take place within the municipality of South Dundas, we are looking just for some maintenance on the circle drive, which is where the blade it turns on, and then a full maintenance on the piece of equipment at the end when they're done using it. They're going to get it in great shape. So we do have, before it starts, mechanics and senior staff look at it together, just walk through it, walk over it, take some pictures, make sure everybody's in agreement and kind of how it is. We do have a clause in there too, in the formal lending agreement that says, if there is a calamitous failure, something that's, not the fault of the local municipality using it, it's just one of these things that happen. Of course, that's not fair to make them responsible for it. That being said, if it is wear and tear or things that they're doing are negligence, of course, as it would be with any type of relationship like this, it's only fair that they pay for whatever happens to it. So the one downfall to this agreement this year is there was a revenue that we had budgeted for through the sale of this surplus piece of equipment. Nothing that we're doing in terms of purchasing is impacted by that revenue. Rather, it'll just be realized next year whenever we do sell it. So it'll come into our reserves next year. So a little bit of loss of revenue this year, but at the end of the day, I think it's a great opportunity to be able to work with the local municipality and help whenever we're in a pickle. And similarly, whenever the opposite happens, we're looking forward to working with our local municipalities too.
Thank you for that explanation and that overview of the process. Questions, comments from Mr. DeHaan? Councillor St. Pierre.
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden. I just want to say I appreciate that the counties are helping the lower tier governments as we talked about these shared services and shared opportunities. South Dundas is going through a little bit of a struggle of trying to find out or trying to recognize if we want to purchase a grader, lease a grader, or even be in the grader business altogether. So we appreciate. My initial concern in talking with Ben earlier was the condition of the grader. I mean, we don't want to inherit a grader for a few weeks and need to put a lot of money back into it just to return it. But Ben has given me the assurance that it's a pretty good shape grader. So again, South Dundas appreciates the loan of the grader on a short-term gap, and hopefully, if there's other things that comes up, that we can utilize some of the county's equipment as well to help with the lower tier government. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Anything further to this program? Thank you very much, Mr. DeHaan. Madam CAO, the administrative update.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So moving on to page 123 in your council agenda, just provided a brief list of the items that I participated in or attended during the last month. So I think council's aware, but we have regular weekly directors meetings, typically on a Monday or Tuesday following a council meeting, in preparation and planning for levels of service and updates to council. I attended Ontario Eastern Ontario Leadership Council meeting on February the 2nd. So the Leadership Council is a working group that represents the Wardens Group and the Mayor's Group on various projects in Eastern Ontario. We had a joint meeting with South Stormont on the Long Sault Logistics Village, so that's a very exciting project that we want to make sure we keep on our radar and provide the support required to make sure that it is successfully launched. I had a meeting with, jointly with Dundas Manor and Infrastructure Ontario, just with respect to their financing application. I've also had some discussions with the Maxville Manor as well. We wrapped up county budget on February the 15th. We had a CAO's meeting amongst the Wardens Caucus group. So the Wardens Caucus meets typically every other month, and the CAOs meet on alternate months in planning for those Wardens Caucus meetings. And we had County Council in February. We also I had a meeting with City of Cornwall Shared Services, which included Melissa Morgan, Mark Boileau, specifically, and Mina Mueller, to talk about the priorities for the Wardens Caucus and how that also will, I think, benefit the shared services that are part of the group with the City of Cornwall. We had a Police Services Board meeting, and I also met with our local detachment officer, Mark Hemrick, and the CAO for North Glengarry to talk about our detachments in those locations. We talked, moving on to the next page, we did talk quite a bit about the health recruitment summit that took place in South Stormont. The staff at South Stormont office, as well as Tara Kirkpatrick, they were key and instrumental in helping get that event launched successfully, and it was very widely attended amongst various organizations, and there was good collaboration. I would say also amongst municipalities, it brings MCA, Cornwall, and the counties together, so I think that from a municipal perspective, there's opportunity there to continue to work together and advocate. We have a slide on page 125 that is just providing a little bit of update on winter control and roads division. I could maybe have Ben speak to a couple of those points, but I think that part of what we wanted to communicate was just, I think, the amount of accumulation that we've seen this past winter. And then we have also, I believe, we have depleted a part of our salt, in most of our salt inventory. Is that correct, Ben?
Yeah, we have had to reorder salt,
Yeah.
which is not uncommon, but we
Yeah.
have had to restock a little bit just to get through the rest of the week.
21 tons of salt. That's quite a bit. There's an emergency management workshop coming up on Thursday, March the 30th. We thought we would put a little bit of information in. The workshop really is geared towards elected officials. Anybody from your councils can attend if they'd like to attend. We put it in there just as an update. We would like people to RSVP just so that we can properly plan for numbers. But that information has been shared with your local municipalities, but it's open for any of your council members. On page 128, I just wanted to provide an update of information that was provided to us from EORN with respect to the cell gap update. These numbers have not changed, I think, from the last report that they've provided to us, but it's just a status update within our region. And also on our agenda, I think shortly we'll see that we have Councillor Williams that has put her name forward to be on the board for the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. On page 129, we have a couple of conferences coming up. I just want to keep the dates on Council's radar. So Good Roads is April the 16th to 19th. AMO is August 20th to 23rd in London. Moving on to page 130, we wanted to let council know our auditors, similar to some of our local municipalities, will be making their way into our offices at the end of March. County Council's April 24th. We have our spring road tour that's confirmed for April the 26th. We will have a grand opening for the Wills Transfer Facility that will take place on May the 2nd. And so that's also, I guess, a significant success. And the Warden's Breakfast is planned in Winchester the morning of Friday, June the 23rd. The last page just speaks a little bit to human resources update. We're going to be recruiting for some key positions. We're trying to recruit currently for summer students. We will see how successful we are with that. And then we are also working through our QP contract that's up for renewal at the end of March. So with that, I kind of quickly ran through, but if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Questions, comments? Councillor McGillis.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. I noticed that you said the EORN for the cell gap had to give you an update. I was just wondering if they had an opportunity to speak to the broadband concerns that the lack in rural areas, because that's part of the things that the EORN are looking at too right now. So I was just wondering if you heard anything, you have any updates on that?
I don't believe through our Warden's Caucus meetings, I don't believe that we have received an update on the broadband matter. I can certainly, though, reach out to them and ask them for some feedback on that. I believe that most of the work on the broadband project has been completed, so I think that I think I'd have to just follow up.
Anything further? Okay. Other questions? No.
No, the cell gap project is being managed by EORN, but broadband is 100% federal and provincial.
Okay, because I know that when I was warden back in 2010, EORN started with the broadband projects, which was over $200 million for that first round. So I just assumed that they were still taking part with this in the project as well. Through you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I believe that, yes, they lobbied the government to manage that project. And so they basically kind of kicked it off, EORN did. But then the government, unlike the cell gap project, they gave them they gave them the money and said the project's yours. They didn't do that with broadband. They kept it in-house, so to speak. But you're right, that's the way it started out. That was the intention.
Anything further for Madam CAO? Thank you. Motions, notice of motions, petitions, miscellaneous business. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry nominate Councillor Carmen Williams to sit on the Board of Directors for the Eastern Ontario Regional Network under such terms as prescribed by the Board.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. It's carried.
It's moved by Councillor Gaindon, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry endorse Councillor Carmen Williams for the position of Roma Zone 7 representative for the 2023-2027 Roma Board of Directors.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. That's carried. And finally,
it's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Gaydon, whereas the United Counties of SDG is apportioned 3 members of a 12-member South Nation River Conservation Authority Board of Directors in accordance with Order in Council 31696. And whereas the entire municipality of South Dundas is within the South Nation River Conservation Authority jurisdiction, and as per past practice has appointed 1 of the 3 members. And whereas the majority of the Township of North Dundas is within the South Nation River Conservation Authority jurisdiction, and as per past practice has appointed 1 of the 3 members. And whereas the majority of the Township of North Stormont is within the South Nation River Conservation Authority jurisdiction, and as per past practice has appointed 1 of the 3 members. And whereas the 3 above-mentioned municipalities have passed resolutions requesting council to appoint a member from their respective municipality. Therefore be it resolved that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry appoints Tom Smith, Councillor, Municipality of South Dundas, Bill Smurl, Public Representative, Township of North Dundas, and Steve Densham, Deputy Mayor, Township of North Stormont, to serve on the South Nation River Conservation Authority Board of Directors as the representatives of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry for a 4-year term.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And as I'd like to extend thanks to Councillor Densham. If you could extend thanks, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Tom Smith. And I will extend thanks on behalf to public person Bill Smurl for their involvement in this important enterprise, the South Nation River Conservation Authority. And I'd also like to extend congratulations and in advance to Councillor Williams for her roles and looking after us at Eorn and Roma. Thank you very much for considering and for taking up the challenge. All the best.
Thank you very much for your support.
We'll move into closed session at this point, I believe. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, that council proceed in camera pursuant to Section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001, labor relations or employee negotiations for a matter related to collective bargaining, and pursuant to Section 239(2)K of the Municipal Act 2001, a position, plan, or procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on or behalf of the municipality or local board for a matter related to contract negotiations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried.